In 1521, on a small island in the Philippines, a 70-year-old chieftain and his warriors did something that the entire world thought was impossible. They killed Ferdinand Magellan. Magellan, the man leading the first expedition to sail around the globe. The man backed by the Spanish Empire, armed with cannons, crossbows, muskets, and steel armor. The man who had already survived mutinies, starvation, and an ocean so vast he named it the Pacific because of how eerily calm it was. He died in waist-deep water, on a beach in Mactan, overwhelmed by warriors fighting with bamboo spears and iron-tipped lances. And the wildest part? We know exactly how it happened. Because a man who was standing right there, bleeding from an arrow wound to his own forehead, wrote the whole thing down. This is the story of the Battle of Mactan. And thanks to modern AI, we can now see the only visual records we have of these events, and transform them into realistic scenes that bring this story to life in a way that's never been done before. So, if you want to see history come alive, stick around, because this story gets wild. It's September 20th, 1519. 5 ships leave the Spanish port of Sanlúcar de Barrameda, loaded with supplies for 2 years at sea. There are about 270 men on board: Spaniards, Portuguese, Italians, Greeks, Germans, a patchwork crew from across Europe. And leading them is Ferdinand Magellan, a Portuguese navigator who has convinced the young Spanish king, Charles I, to fund an incredibly risky idea: find a westward route to the Spice Islands of Southeast Asia. Now, spices in the 1500s aren't like spices today. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves. These are worth more than gold by weight. Entire empires rise and fall chasing them. Portugal controls the eastern route around Africa, so Spain needs a new path. That's Magellan's pitch. Sail west, find a way through South America, reach Asia from the other side. The fleet crosses the Atlantic, hugs the coast of South America, and spends a brutal winter in Patagonia. 3 of his 5 captains mutiny against him. Magellan crushes the rebellion. 1 captain is executed, 2 are marooned on the frozen shore. Then a storm wrecks one of his ships. Another deserts and sails back to Spain. Down to 3 ships, Magellan pushes south. In late October 1520, he finds what he's been looking for: a narrow, winding strait at the bottom of South America. It takes 38 days to navigate it. On the other side, the Pacific Ocean. An ocean so enormous that Magellan and his crew will spend 98 days crossing it without hitting land. Men begin eating sawdust, leather strips from the rigging, and rats. Scurvy ravages the crew. Their gums swell, their teeth fall out, some die. By the time they finally reach the island of Guam in March 1521, the expedition is barely alive. But Magellan keeps going. Days later, on March 16th, 1521, they sight the mountains of Samar, the first recorded European contact with the Philippine archipelago. Magellan and his crew island hop through the Visayas, trading with locals and slowly making their way to the island of Cebu. They arrive on April 7th, 1521, and this is where things get complicated fast. Magellan befriends Raja Humabon, the chieftain of Cebu. Through interpreters, he convinces Humabon and his wife to convert to Christianity. Humabon is baptized Carlos after the Spanish king. His wife is baptized Juana. A mass baptism follows. By some accounts, as many as 2,200 people convert in just days. Magellan gifts them a statue of the Santo Niño, the child Jesus, and plants a large wooden cross on the shoreline. But Magellan isn't just spreading religion, he's building alliances. He issues an order. All nearby chiefs must provide food for his ships, convert to Christianity, and recognize the King of Spain as their sovereign. Most of them comply. One does not. Across a narrow strait from Cebu sits the island of Mactan. It has two chieftains. One is Datu Zula, who cooperates with the Spanish. The other is Datu Lapu-Lapu, and he refuses everything. He won't convert, he won't pay tribute, he won't bow to Humabon or to any foreign king. Now here's what's important to understand. Magellan made a critical mistake. He assumed Philippine society worked like European feudalism, that Raja Humabon ruled over Mactan the way a European king would rule a province. But Visayan societies were structured as loose federations of independent chiefdoms. Lapu-Lapu didn't answer to Humabon. In fact, historians believe Lapu-Lapu may have been more powerful than Humabon. Mactan's position allowed it to intercept trade ships entering Cebu's harbour. One account even suggests Lapu-Lapu replied to Magellan's demands by saying he was unwilling to bow to someone he had been commanding for a long time. On April 26th, Datu Zula sends his son to Magellan with 2 goats as a gift and a message. He would have sent more, but Lapu-Lapu was preventing him. Whether Zula genuinely needed help or was cleverly using the Spanish to eliminate a rival, we'll never know for certain. But the result is the same. Magellan decides to sail to Mactan and force Lapu-Lapu to submit. His own men warn him not to go. Raja Humabon offers to send warriors. Magellan refuses the help. He tells Humabon and Zula to stay in their boats and watch. He wants them to see how Spaniards fight. That decision will cost him his life. Midnight, April 26th. Magellan and about 60 men board 3 boats and leave Cebu. They arrive off the coast of Mactan around 3 in the morning. It's pitch dark. The tide is low. Magellan sends a messenger to shore with a final ultimatum. Submit to the King of Spain and Raja Humabon, or face the consequences. Lapu-Lapu's response? According to Pigafetta, the warriors laugh at the ultimatum. Lapu-Lapu sends word back that his men have lances of bamboo and stakes hardened with fire. He tells Magellan, attack when you wish, but he asks Magellan to wait until morning. And here's where Magellan makes another error. He agrees to wait. Some historians believe Lapu-Lapu used those hours to position his warriors and prepare the battlefield. Given that he was approximately 70 years old, Lapu-Lapu was likely directing strategy from a safe distance. This wasn't going to be a reckless charge. It was a calculated defense. Dawn breaks. Around 5 in the morning, Magellan orders 49 of his men into the water. 11 stay behind to guard the boats. But there's a massive problem. The coral reef surrounding Mactan stretches roughly 1.5 kilometers out from shore. The boats can't get close. The ships with their cannons are anchored far behind, completely out of range. So 49 men in heavy European armor wade through waist-deep and chest-deep water for the distance of 2 crossbow flights, that's several hundred meters, before they even reach the beach. They're exhausted before the fighting starts. When they reach the shore, Lapu-Lapu's warriors are waiting. Pigafetta estimates over 1,500 men, divided into 3 formations. Now, modern historians think that number is inflated. Mactan is a small island, and a more realistic estimate may be somewhere between 300 and 1,500, but regardless, the Spanish are dramatically outnumbered. Magellan orders his musketeers and crossbowmen to fire. The shots ring out, but the distance is too great, and the smoke and noise don't intimidate the Mactan warriors at all. Magellan then sends men to burn houses near the shore, hoping to terrify the defenders into retreat. It has the opposite effect. The burning only enrages them. The warriors charge. They've noticed something critical. The Spanish have armored their heads and chests, but their legs are exposed. So the Mactan fighters aim low. Poisoned arrows, bamboo spears, stones, iron-tipped lances, all directed at the legs of the invaders. It's devastating. The fighting lasts over an hour. Magellan is hit by a poisoned arrow in the leg. He orders a retreat, but only a handful of his men obey. A bamboo lance strikes near his face. He kills the attacker, but the lance gets stuck and he can't pull his sword from its scabbard quickly enough. Another lance pierces his arm. Then a large javelin hits his left leg, and he collapses face first into the shallows. The warriors swarm him. Pigafetta, who is right there, bleeding from his own arrow wound, writes that Magellan looked back 2 or 3 times as he fell, checking to make sure his remaining men were retreating to safety. And then the warriors finish him with their spears and blades. 8 Spanish soldiers die alongside him. 4 native Christian allies are also killed. Pigafetta and the survivors scramble back to the boats and flee. After the battle, Raja Humabon offered Lapu-Lapu a ransom of copper and iron in exchange for Magellan's body. Lapu-Lapu refused. He kept it as a war trophy. Things got worse for the Spanish. Days later, Humabon invited the surviving crew to a feast and poisoned them. Several more men died. The survivors, now too few to crew 3 ships, burned the Concepcion and fled on the remaining 2 vessels, the Trinidad and the Victoria. It took them months to reach the Spice Islands. From there, only the Victoria, commanded by Juan Sebastian Elcano, managed to complete the return to Spain. The Trinidad tried to sail back across the Pacific and failed. Its crew were captured by the Portuguese. On September 6, 1522, 3 years after leaving, the Victoria limped into the port of Sanlúcar de Barrameda. Of the 270 men who had set out, only 18 remained. They walked barefoot through the streets of Seville, holding candles, in a procession of thanks for surviving what no human being had ever done before: sail all the way around the world. And Magellan? In Portugal, people called him a traitor for sailing under the Spanish flag. In Spain, the survivors blamed him for poor leadership. His wife and child had died in Seville before the expedition returned. As one historian put it, it seemed as though every trace of Ferdinand Magellan had vanished from the earth. The Battle of Mactan delayed Spanish colonization of the Philippines by 44 years. It wasn't until 1565 that Miguel López de Legazpi successfully established a Spanish foothold, beginning over 3 centuries of colonial rule. Today, Lapu-Lapu is honored as the Philippines' first national hero. His statue stands on Mactan Island. A city bears his name. His image appears on the seals of the Philippine National Police and the Bureau of Fire Protection. According to local legend, Lapu-Lapu never died. He turned to stone and still guards the seas of Mactan. Fishermen throw coins at a stone shaped like a man before heading out, asking the old chieftain's permission to fish in his waters. And Magellan? He's honored too, in a different way. Magellan's cross still stands in Cebu City. The Santo Niño he gifted to Queen Humame is preserved in the Basilica del Santo Niño. Countless streets, towns, and landmarks across the Philippines bear his name, usually in the Spanish spelling Magallanes. Right next to the Lapu-Lapu statue on Mactan, there's a half-destroyed obelisk that the Spanish built to honor Magellan. It was defaced after the American occupation. 2 monuments, side by side, telling 2 very different stories about the same day. That's what makes the Battle of Mactan so fascinating. It's a story with no simple heroes or villains. Magellan was a brilliant navigator who achieved something unimaginable, but he was also reckless and arrogant. Lapu-Lapu was a defender of his people and his sovereignty, but the world he was protecting would be colonized anyway within decades. The history is messy and complicated, and that's exactly why it's worth telling properly. "500 years ago on a beach in Mactan, 49 armoured Europeans waded toward a shore where over 1,000 warriors were waiting. The man leading them thought his weapons and his armour made him untouchable. He was wrong. The Battle of Mactan lasted barely an hour, but its echoes have lasted 5 centuries. If you enjoyed this video and you learned something new, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want more stories like this, real history, told properly, brought to life with AI, subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot more coming. Thanks for watching.